Imagine looking at a calendar hanging on your wall, and it's marked 2036.
Okay, 2036.
Right. What does your life actually look like? Seriously, take a second and just picture your daily routine. Like, how do you earn a living? How do you buy your groceries?
Who's even running the global economy at that point?
Exactly, because usually when we try to envision a decade into the future, we just project our current lives forward on this, nice, comfortable, linear curve.
Right, yeah. It is entirely human to expect tomorrow to be just a slightly patched version of today. I mean, we rely on that predictable curve to make long-term decisions.
Yeah, about our careers, our mortgages.
Kids' educations, all of it.
But then you listen to the architects of the technology that is actively building that future, and suddenly that linear curve just completely shatters.
Well, it goes right out the window.
It really does.
Hmm.
The predictable 2036 calendar you just imagined, it gets completely thrown out. We're looking at a forecast that doesn't just change like the apps on your phone.
No, it changes the fundamental definition of what it means to be a human being participating in a society.
And that is exactly what we have on our plate today. We've got our hands on a brand new, full-length 2026 interview between The Economist and Elon Musk.
Yeah, and this was recorded right on the floor of Tesla Giga, which gives it a really interesting vibe.
It does. And it is a sweeping, deeply philosophical, and occasionally very tense conversation.
Very tense.
Yeah. We are going to be diving into some deeply controversial territory today, too. We're talking the war in Ukraine, Europe's immigration crisis, and even massive slashes to U.S. government spending.
Right. And just to be clear, right up front for everyone listening, our job on this deep dive isn't to tell you who is right or who is wrong.
Exactly. We are not taking Musk's side, and we aren't taking the interviewer's side.
We are just the architects unpacking the blueprints here. We just want you to see how these arguments are built.
Right, so you can evaluate these moral frameworks completely independently. So let's start with the first blueprint, which is this 10-year countdown clock to something known as the AI singularity.
Yeah, that 10-year window is really the anchor for everything else they discuss in this interview. Musk predicts that by 2036, we are looking at an age of amazing abundance.
Amazing abundance, but there's a prerequisite for that, right?
Right. The prerequisite for that abundance is his timeline for artificial superintelligence. He predicts that in roughly 5 years, so around 2031, based on the recording date, artificial intelligence will exceed the total sum of all human intelligence combined.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sum of all human intelligence is one of those phrases that's really easy to just gloss over.
It sounds like sci-fi.
It does. But he doesn't mean AI will be smarter than the smartest single person, like, an Einstein or a von Neumann.
No, not at all.
He means the collective cognitive output of all 8 billion people on Earth surpassed in half a decade.
Right. And grasping that requires a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence actually is in an economic context.
How so?
Well, Musk breaks the future economy down into two foundational pillars. You have digital intelligence and you have physical intelligence.
Okay, so digital intelligence is what we're seeing right now. Okay?
Exactly. We are seeing it advance at just a blistering pace. Language models are achieving breakthroughs in coding, in legal analysis, medical diagnostics.
But the catch is they're largely trapped behind screens.
Yes, they lack what roboticists call end effectors.
End effector. So we are talking about the physical interface here.
Yeah, an end effector is basically the part of a robot that interacts with the physical environment. So think of a human hand or a specialized gripper on a manufacturing arm.
Okay, got it.
Musk argues that to reach true economic abundance, you have to take that vast digital intelligence and actually pair it with end effectors in the physical world.
So you need humanoid robots?
You need humanoid robots, and you
No.
need them in the hundreds of millions.
I see the logic there. If you just have ChatGPT writing these brilliant architectural blueprints, that's great, but somebody still has to actually swing the hammer.
And the funny thing is, swinging the hammer is actually the harder part to automate.
Really?
Yeah, there is this concept in computer science called Moravec's paradox. It basically observes that high-level reasoning, like playing chess or writing a symphony, requires very little computation to replicate.
Oh, interesting.
But low-level sensoromotor skills, like a toddler walking across a cluttered room, or just recognizing a paper cup and grasping it without crushing it, those require enormous computational resources.
That makes sense, actually. We conquered the digital realm first because math and language follow strict rules.
Exactly. The physical world is messy, it's unpredictable, and it's governed by friction and gravity.
So Musk is basically saying we are on the verge of solving Moravec's paradox.
Yeah.
We are taking the digital superbrain and putting it into millions of mechanical bodies that can navigate the messy physical world.
That's the vision. And he claims that when you combine vast numbers of these robots with vast digital intelligence, the economy becomes quasi-infinite.
Quasi-infinite. But wait, if the economy at its absolute core is simply the production of goods and the provision of services, then human labor is the ultimate bottleneck, right?
Exactly. I mean, a human needs to sleep. A human needs a salary.
They get injured, they take vacations.
Right. But a robot powered by a solar grid and guided by superintelligence, it works 24/7.
So when the cost of labor drops to just the cost of electricity, the constraints on production basically just evaporate.
They do.
Wait, I'm struggling with this a bit, though. Let's look at the actual mechanics of a quasi-infinite economy. If AI and robots are providing absolutely everything, how do companies like Tesla or SpaceX or X actually make any money?
That's a great question.
Right. Because if goods and services are just everywhere, it seems like the entire concept of currency just breaks down. It's like trying to sell ice in the Arctic. If the resource is ubiquitous, the currency used to acquire it loses its utility completely.
And when the interviewer pressed him on exactly this paradox, Musk made another massive prediction.
Which was?
He said money simply won't matter in 2036.
Well, I mean, that is a pretty convenient thing for the world's richest man to say.
Right. The interviewer actually points that out. They say, look, the people buying Tesla shares today probably expect you to generate a return in a currency that actually means something.
Yeah. How does an economy function without money as a medium of exchange?
To understand his argument, we really have to look at the macroeconomic equation of exchange. The value of money is inextricably linked to scarcity.
Yep.
Inflation and deflation are ultimately just about ratios. Inflation happens when you have a large supply of money chasing a limited supply of goods and services.
Right. So if a central bank prints trillions of dollars, but the factories aren't producing any more cars or houses, the price of cars and houses skyrockets.
Exactly. Too many dollars chasing too few goods.
Okay, I'm with you.
But Musk is proposing the inverse of that, on a scale we've literally never seen in human history.
Because of the robots.
Yes, if this robotic and AI workforce increases the output of physical goods and services by 1,000%, the supply of things you can buy suddenly dwarfs the money supply.
Oh, wow. Because the labor cost is essentially zero, and the intelligence cost is zero.
Right, so prices collapse. Musk predicts that massive systemic deflation will be the defining economic reality of the 2030s.
But hold on. If we are in a massive deflationary spiral where everything costs pennies, companies don't make profits.
Right.
Which means they can't pay their human employees, which means people have no money at all. I mean, you can have the cheapest robotic tomatoes in the world, but if nobody has a paycheck, they still starve.
And that leads into the concept of a post-scarcity transition.
Okay.
Musk suggests that as this deflation takes hold, the sheer volume of material wealth generated by AI will be so vast that basic needs, food, shelter, energy, transportation, they will become practically free.
Practically free.
Yeah, the economic structure shifts from a system of rationing scarce resources through prices to a system of managing abundance.
I mean, a post-scarcity world sounds like a utopia on paper, but an economy that runs entirely without us raises a much darker question.
It definitely does.
What happens to human agency? Like, if we aren't needed to build, to think, or to produce, who is actually in the driver's seat?
Well, this brings us to one of the most philosophically jarring moments of the entire interview.
Right.
Musk admits, without hesitation, that humans will likely not be in control in 10 years' time.
He didn't even blink.
Yeah.
And the analogy he used to explain why we won't be in control is what he called the chimpanzee problem.
Right. He asks us to look at the intelligence gap between an artificial superintelligence and a human, and then compare it to the intelligence gap between a human and a chimpanzee.
Okay.
Evolutionarily speaking, we share about 98% of our DNA with chimps.
That's so close.
It is. But that 2% difference in cognitive architecture dictates the entire state of the world. Humans build cities, we split the atom, we write symphonies.
And the chimpanzees live in the forests we allow them to live in.
Exactly. They are not in charge of their own destiny on a macro scale.
He literally joked that swinging through trees eating bananas is fun, and maybe we should do more of it.
Yeah, he did.
But underneath the joke, the message is chilling. You can have fun swinging through the trees in this new age of abundance, but you do not control the fate of the planet.
No. We are actively building our own successors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound evolution in Musk's own philosophy regarding AI risk, doesn't it?
It really does. The Economist interviewer astutely brings up Musk's past statements here. Because just a decade ago, on a podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson, Musk was terrified of this exact scenario.
Right. He was deeply worried about rapid recursive self-improvement in AI.
Yeah, the idea that once an AI is smart enough to rewrite its own code, it will continuously upgrade itself until it becomes an unrecognizable, godlike entity in a matter of days.
He famously warned that humans could end up as the equivalent of pet Labradors to super-intelligent machines.
Yes.
Yeah, and he didn't stop there. I mean, he signed that massive open letter in 2023 calling for a 6-month pause on AI development. He was warning about a 10 to 20% chance of killer robots wiping out humanity.
He has absolutely been the loudest voice in the room yelling about existential risk.
But in this 2026 interview,
Mm.
his tone has completely shifted. He seems to have just accepted it.
It's a massive shift. It's gone from frantic existential panic to a strange kind of fatalistic acceptance.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that the non-zero risk of a catastrophic outcome still exists, but he has arrived at the conclusion that there is simply no physical way to stop this incredible momentum.
Because of the money.
The money and the power. The economic incentives to build smarter AI are too massive, and the geopolitical consequences of falling behind are just too severe.
So even if you wanted to stop it, you can't.
He says that even if there were a magical stop button, he isn't sure we should press it because the most likely outcome is that incredible quasi-infinite abundance we talked about.
Enjoy the ride. That's his new philosophy. And he backs up this fatalism with some incredibly deep physics. He brings up the standard model of physics and the heat death of the universe.
Yeah, he zooms all the way out. According to our current understanding of thermodynamics, the universe is constantly increasing in entropy.
Right.
So eventually, trillions of years from now, all the stars will brain out, all the black holes will evaporate,
Okay.
and the universe will reach a state of maximum entropy. It'll just be a long, boring, gradual cooling into a thin, uniform gray soup where no energy can be extracted to do work.
Wow. So his argument is, if the ultimate destination for reality is a cold, dead void anyway, why are we stressing so much about who is in charge on this tiny rock?
Exactly. It really is all about the journey.
I mean, it is a very cosmic, almost nihilistic justification for pushing ahead with potentially dangerous technology.
It is.
But if we bring it back down to earth, to the actual day-to-day reality of the people listening to this deep dive right now, how does this lack of control impact our sense of identity?
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The interviewer presses him on the psychological impact of this transition, especially regarding jobs. What happens to the knowledge worker, the lawyer, the coder, the writer?
And Musk brings up the stockfish reality.
Yes. Stockfish is perhaps the most vital analogy in the entire interview.
Let's explain that.
To understand its impact, we have to look at the history of computer chess. Back in 1997, IBM's Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov.
Right, big deal at the time.
Massive milestone. But Deep Blue was a supercomputer the size of a room, and it won largely through brute force calculation. Fast forward to the 2010s, and open source engines like Stockfish emerged. Stockfish doesn't need a supercomputer. It can run on the smartphone in your pocket right now.
And it doesn't just beat human grandmasters, it completely obliterates them.
It really does.
I mean, the ELO rating system is how we measure chess skill, right? The absolute maximum a human has ever achieved, I think it's Magnus Carlsen, is somewhere around 2880.
Right.
Stockfish is operating at an ELO of 3600 or higher.
Yeah.
It is playing a fundamentally different game. Magnus Carlsen himself has actually said that he doesn't even try to play against computers anymore because it's just too depressing.
Now, take that feeling and apply it to every single cognitive task human beings perform.
Oh, man.
Musk is suggesting that very soon AI will reach Stockfish level for writing software, for analyzing legal contracts, for diagnosing medical images, all of it.
Imagine your own job.
Yeah.
You know, the thing you spent 4 years in college and maybe 3 years in grad school learning how to do. The skill you base your entire professional identity on.
Yeah.
Now imagine walking into work and realizing you are playing chess against Stockfish. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many hours you put in, you have literally zero chance of adding value compared to the machine. What does that do to a person's psyche?
Well, the interviewer correctly identifies this as a huge crisis of meaning. If human labor is economically worthless because it is vastly inferior to the machine alternative, what do we actually do with our time?
Right.
Musk's answer is that work will become entirely optional. He compares it to artisanal gardening.
Artisanal gardening.
Hmm.
He says you don't need to grow tomatoes in your backyard today. You can go to the supermarket and buy perfectly round, genetically optimized tomatoes grown on a massive industrial scale for super cheap.
Exactly. But millions of people still plant seeds, they pull weeds, and they harvest their own misshapen tomatoes because they find deep psychological satisfaction in the act of creation.
So the output, the tomato itself, is not the point. The process is the point.
Yes. Musk envisions a future.
When you invite a friend over and serve a meal from your own garden, it has an artisanal relational value.
Right. People still play chess with each other today, even though stockfish exists, because there is value in the human-to-human struggle.
Okay, so we are hurtling toward a world where humans are outmatched by stockfish-level AI in every domain, our labor is reduced to optional gardening, and we aren't even the smartest entities in the room anymore.
That's the picture he paints.
Which begs a massive mechanical question. If we aren't in control, how are the architects of this technology making sure it doesn't just decide it doesn't want us around?
And that leads into Musk's practical proposal for regulating the birth of artificial superintelligence.
Right.
And it is a system he recently pitched directly to Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind. Musk is proposing something akin to the Motion Picture Association.
The Motion Picture Association. You mean the group that slaps a PG-13 or an R rating on a Marvel movie?
Yeah. That's the one.
I mean, that seems incredibly quaint for a technology that could theoretically orchestrate the collapse of the global power grid.
It does sound quaint on the surface, but the underlying mechanism actually relies on a very brutal, very effective human trait: competitive self-interest.
Okay, how does that work?
Musk suggests a weekly or bi-weekly call among the leaders of the top frontier model makers. We are talking about Demis Hassabis at DeepMind, Sam Altman at OpenAI, Dario Amodei at Anthropic, and crucially, the leaders of the top Chinese AI labs.
But I mean, the interviewer immediately spots the fatal flaw here, right? These guys absolutely do not trust each other.
Oh, not at all. They trade insults on social media constantly.
Exactly. I mean, Dario Amodei literally spun Anthropic out of OpenAI specifically because he didn't trust Sam Altman's ethical direction. So can we really entrust the safety of the human race to a group of bitter rivals who view this as a zero-sum race to a trillion-dollar valuation?
Well, what's fascinating here is that Musk argues their lack of trust is actually the exact mechanism that makes the system work. Yeah, it is essentially a multiplayer prisoner's dilemma. He says you don't need them to be friends. The proposal is that before any company releases a massive new breakthrough model, a true frontier model, they must give their competitors a 1 to 2 week window to test it.
Wait, but are they just handing over the source code? Because if OpenAI gives Anthropic their source code, Anthropic will just steal the architecture.
No, they don't hand over the weights or the code. They provide access via an API.
An application programming interface.
Exactly. Think of an API like a secure digital window. Anthropic can pass data through the window to OpenAI's new model, ask it questions, test its capabilities, and receive answers back, but they can't see the underlying code or steal the blueprint.
Oh.
They basically act as an external red team.
Okay, so they are poking it through the API to see if it breaks.
Exactly. And because they are rivals, every competitor has a massive financial and reputational incentive to find a fatal flaw in the other's product.
Oh, wait.
If OpenAI creates a model that has a dangerous vulnerability, say, it can easily generate instructions for synthesizing biological weapons. Anthropic is highly motivated to find that danger and scream it from the rooftops.
Right, to delay OpenAI's release and claim the moral high ground. It's a trustless system of mutual auditing.
Exactly.
It's basically a technological Mexican standoff. They're keeping each other honest at gunpoint. But where is the government in all this? Doesn't the government have a say in regulating weapons-grade technology?
Musk envisions the government as the final enforcer. The hammer, not the primary auditor.
Okay.
He believes that government bureaucrats simply lack the deep, cutting-edge technical expertise to evaluate these neural networks. The technology moves too fast for traditional regulatory agencies to keep up.
That makes sense.
But if a company like Anthropic flags a massive security risk in a new OpenAI model, and OpenAI refuses to fix it and tries to release it anyway, that is when they alert the government to step in with an injunction.
And there is a real-world precedent for this that they discussed during the interview, right? They bring up the release of a model called Mythos by Anthropic.
Yeah.
It wasn't a government regulatory agency that found the danger in Mythos. It was Amazon.
Right. Amazon Web Services is a massive cloud infrastructure provider. They were hosting components of the model, and their internal security teams detected severe cybersecurity risks in the Mythos architecture.
Wow.
Amazon actually called the White House, forcing the government to step in with the threat of export controls to halt its widespread release.
So the ecosystem audits itself, and the state acts as the enforcer only when the gentleman's agreement breaks down.
Pretty much.
But there's a massive blind spot in this entire regulatory theory. They're only talking about regulating the software, the models themselves.
Right.
But AI doesn't run on magic. It doesn't exist purely in the ether. It requires massive, planet-scale physical infrastructure, and the people controlling that infrastructure aren't necessarily on those weekly Zoom calls.
No, they aren't. And this brings us to the physical bottleneck. We can talk about APIs and digital Mexican standoffs all day, but to actually train these frontier models, you need data centers the size of small cities. You need the geopolitical arms race.
And this is where the theoretical fears become intensely practical, because we have to talk about the rise of Chinese AI capabilities. During the interview, they discuss a brand new Chinese model called the Kimi K3.
Yeah, the Kimi K3 is apparently astonishingly close in capability to Anthropic's absolute top-tier model, which is called Fable.
Which shocked a lot of analysts, considering the massive constraints placed on China by the U.S. government.
It did. Which brings us back to the mechanics of building superintelligence. It isn't just about writing good code, it's about hardware.
Right.
Musk breaks it down to two fundamental physical resources, AI chips and electricity.
And he specifically notes that water usage for cooling data centers is negligible in the grand scheme, contrary to some popular environmental narratives. The real constraints are silicon and power.
Exactly. It's a fascinating asymmetric arms race. The United States currently holds a near monopoly on the absolute cutting-edge AI chips.
Right, largely due to intense export bans preventing companies like NVIDIA from selling their top-tier GPUs to Chinese firms.
But the U.S. has a massive problem. They can't plug those chips in fast enough.
Because the U.S. power grid is antiquated.
Completely. Permitting for new transmission lines can take a decade.
And China is in the exact opposite position. Musk points out a staggering statistic. China currently produces more electricity than the United States, Europe, and India combined.
It's unbelievable. They have an aggressive, fast-moving infrastructure apparatus. He predicts they are heading toward having 4 times the electricity production of the U.S., which roughly matches their population advantage.
So it's an arms race where one side is hoarding all the engines and the other side is sitting on an ocean of fuel. The U.S. has the chips but lacks the power. China has endless power but is starved for the best chips.
But here's the critical warning Musk issues. China is becoming incredibly efficient with the older chips they do have.
Oh, interesting.
They are optimizing their software to squeeze every drop of compute out of lesser hardware, which explains how the Kimi K3 model got so close to Fable.
Wow.
And worst for the U.S. position, Musk says China is much closer than people realize to solving the lithography problem.
Okay, let's explain what that means, because lithography is the bottleneck of all bottlenecks.
It really is.
Extreme ultraviolet lithography, or EUV, is the process used to make advanced microchips. You use a high-powered laser to blast microscopic droplets of tin 50,000 times a second to create a plasma.
Right.
And that plasma emits extreme ultraviolet light, which is bounced off the flattest mirrors in the universe to etch circuit patterns on a silicon wafer that are literally only a few atoms wide.
It is widely considered the most complex machine human beings have ever built.
It's mind-blowing.
And currently, only one company in the world, ASML in the Netherlands, can actually make these machines. And the U.S. has heavily pressured the Dutch government to ban the export of these EUV machines to China.
Right, but if China figures out how to build their own EUV machines, if they solve the lithography problem, their chip constraint vanishes overnight.
Overnight.
And because they already have virtually unlimited power, they will surge into the lead in the AI race.
Exactly. And it's not just digital intelligence they're advancing either. Musk highlights that China is already demonstrating dominance in physical robotics. He mentions watching these wild headless robot fighting events in Beijing.
Wait, headless robot fighting?
Yes. It's a spectacle where humanoid robots are pitted against each other, and even if a robot gets its head knocked off, its systems are decentralized enough that it just keeps fighting.
That is terrifying.
It sounds like a scene from a dystopian sci-fi movie, but economically it proves they are rapidly mastering the physical end effectors, the spatial awareness, and the ruggedness required for a robotic workforce.
So outside of China, the primary constraint is electricity. The U.S. just doesn't have the grid for it.
Yeah.
And Musk drops a wild, almost unbelievable solution to the U.S. power grid issue:
Sure.
orbital data centers in space.
It sounds absurd on its face, but if you look at the physics and the economics of the SpaceX roadmap, it starts to make a weird kind of sense.
How?
Well, on Earth, data centers face two massive problems: drawing enough power from a local grid and rejecting the immense heat generated by the server.
Right, the cooling issue. But in space, you have uninterrupted solar irradiance. The sun is always shining, with no atmosphere or clouds to filter the energy.
Precisely. You launch the data centers into low Earth orbit, you unfurl massive solar arrays to power them, completely disconnected from the terrestrial grid,
Okay.
and you utilize the vacuum of space and radiative panels to handle the cooling.
But wait, how do you get the data back and forth? I mean, if you are training an AI, the latency of beaming petabytes of data down to Earth seems like a massive bottleneck.
That's where optical laser links come in. Starlink is already testing inter-satellite laser communications that can transmit data at near the speed of light in a vacuum.
Oh.
Which is actually faster than light traveling through fiber optic cables on Earth. And the economics of this are only possible because of Starship, which is designed to drop the cost of launching mass to orbit to unprecedented lows.
So you basically bypass the terrestrial permitting process, the environmental reviews, and the aging grid by just putting the servers in space.
Exactly.
It's a massive, capital-intensive infrastructure race. But this transition, building the power plants, the orbital hubs, the chip fabs, is going to cause immense economic friction in the short term.
Oh, absolutely.
And this friction brings us to the messy reality of present-day politics, government spending, and how we actually bridge the gap between today and that 2036 age of abundance.
Because long before we reach a post-scarcity utopia where money doesn't matter, we are going to face massive waves of automation.
Right.
As AI begins to hollow out cognitive labor, you will have millions of displaced workers who still have mortgages to pay and groceries to buy in a world where money very much does still matter.
So the interviewer presses Musk on the politics of this transition. If we are facing mass displacement, do we need massive wealth redistribution? Do we need a universal basic income funded by exorbitant taxes on the wealthy and on corporations?
And Musk's answer to this is surprisingly simple, yet it completely upends traditional economic theory. He says the Treasury should simply issue checks to citizens. A universal basic income, no strings attached.
Just put in the money and send it out.
Yep. But the interviewer, representing classical economic thought, immediately challenges the mechanics of this. If the government just prints trillions of dollars out of thin air and mails out checks to everyone, you get hyperinflation.
Right, the value of the currency collapses.
Right.
We've seen this in the Weimar Republic, in Zimbabwe, in Venezuela. If everyone suddenly gets $10,000 a month, the landlord just raises the rent by $10,000. But this is where I want to push back on Musk's theory of the quasi-infinite economy. He claims that the old rules of inflation won't apply here. He argues that because AI and robots will be increasing the physical output of goods and services by 1,000%, the government can safely print money.
Right.
But does that actually hold up globally? Like if the U.S. Treasury is printing trillions of fiat currency, even if robots are making cheap tomatoes locally, doesn't that massive influx of dollars destroy the currency's value on the global foreign exchange market? How does quasi-infinite local production prevent the dollar from losing its reserve status?
It is a critical mechanical question. Musk's counter is that AI production isn't just local, it scales globally.
Okay.
The deflationary pressure of automated zero marginal cost production acts as a massive anchor on the price index. If a robotic factory can build a house in 2 days for a tenth of the current cost, the real-world value of a printed dollar stretches further. So as long as the physical creation of goods, the actual wealth of the society, is expanding faster than the money supply, the currency maintains its purchasing power, at least domestically.
Okay, so he paints this mathematically smooth, almost elegant transition to UBI in the future. But there is a massive contradiction here.
Yeah, there is.
While Musk advocates for the Treasury to just mail people checks in 10 years, his present-day actions regarding government spending tell a radically different story.
Very true.
And this is where the interview gets incredibly contentious.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Musk's involvement in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
The contrast is jarring. You have a man projecting post-scarcity abundance, yet in the immediate present, he spent massive amounts of political capital attempting to ruthlessly slash government spending.
Right. Musk argues that the current U.S. deficit is an existential threat to the nation's survival.
He brings up the debt mechanics, which are objectively terrifying. When a government runs a deficit, they issue treasury bonds, which they have to pay interest on. And as the debt grows and interest rates remain high, those interest payments compound. Musk points out that the interest payments on the national debt alone now exceed the entire combined budgets of the Department of War and all U.S. intelligence agencies.
Wow.
From Musk's perspective, this is a terminal debt spiral. The state is bleeding money to service past debt, leaving less for future innovation. It is an unsustainable math problem that requires a surgical or perhaps a chainsaw intervention.
But the interviewer challenges the method of those cuts, specifically focusing on foreign aid to Africa.
Yeah, that got heated.
The interviewer argues that the suddenness and brutality of the Doge cuts caused real-world chaos. They argue it shut down critical aid programs like antiretroviral drug distribution, basically overnight, leading to unnecessary suffering and deaths.
And Musk vehemently, almost angrily, pushes back on this accusation. He claims that 0 people died due to the sudden cuts. 0. He argues that the traditional government aid apparatus is heavily corrupted. He cites examples of wire transfers intended for infrastructure in Africa that mysteriously ended up routed to consulting firms or bank accounts in Washington, D.C.
So what does this all mean? We have two fundamentally opposed views on the role and efficiency of the state.
We do.
The Economist interviewer views the traditional government bureaucracy as an irreplaceable, stabilizing safety net. Yes, the bureaucracy might be slow, it might be heavily regulated, it might be inefficient, but it provides consistent life support.
Right. And to suddenly rip that funding away is, in their view, reckless, ideological, and deadly.
But Musk views that exact same apparatus as a bloated, inefficient system riddled with fraud. He is applying the Silicon Valley ethos of move fast and break things directly to the federal budget.
Exactly. His argument is that if a truly vital service loses government funding, it shouldn't rely on a slow bureaucracy anyway.
Yeah.
He argues that massive private foundations like the Gates Foundation or Mackenzie Scott's philanthropic arms, which sit on tens of billions of dollars, can and should step in instantly to fill the gap.
He fundamentally believes that private, centralized capital moves faster, more efficiently, and with greater accountability than democratic bureaucracy, which honestly perfectly mirrors how he demands absolute control over his own companies.
It really does. And that transitions us into the structure of corporate power.
Right, because the interviewer directly challenges Musk on the fact that he holds roughly 80% voting control over his companies.
Which, in modern corporate governance, is an extreme, almost unheard of concentration of power for a public company.
But Musk defends this autocracy by pointing out a massive structural flaw in the mechanics of public markets. It comes down to the incentive structure of portfolio managers and hedge funds on Wall Street.
Let's look at how short selling and quarterly earnings actually work. A portfolio manager at a major fund is heavily incentivized to produce short-term quarterly earnings growth. Their own compensation, their multi-million-dollar bonuses, and their career advancement depend entirely on how their portfolio performs this quarter.
So they are structurally incapable of patience.
Exactly.
And if a company misses its quarterly earnings target, the hedge funds don't just sell the stock, they short it. They borrow shares they don't own, sell them on the open market to drive the price down, and then buy them back at the lower price to pocket the difference.
Right.
So if a CEO spends billions of dollars on long-term R&D, like designing a massive rocket to go to Mars, that crushes their short-term profit margins.
And when the margins get crushed, the short sellers descend, the stock price plummets, the board of directors panics, and the CEO gets fired.
Wow.
The public market essentially punishes long-term vision. Musk argues that he needs that 80% authoritarian voting control to protect the company from the short-term greed of the market. He needs to be unfireable to make 5 to 10-year bets.
He draws an implicit parallel to Steve Jobs here, doesn't he?
He does.
Apple, during its most innovative period, was driven by a singular creative genius with a dictatorial power to force breakthrough products into existence. The iPhone, the iPad.
Yeah.
Jobs didn't run product design by a focus group or a committee.
No, he didn't. And Musk suggests that without that kind of visionary autocracy, a company just becomes a polished, risk-averse corporate machine that only produces iterative, minor updates.
I mean, it makes complete sense from a product development standpoint. If you want to build a reusable rocket, You need a dictator who can ignore the accountants.
Right.
But the interviewer raises the stakes to a global level. It's one thing to dictate the design of a Cybertruck. It is quite another when that same unchecked individual power is applied to geopolitics. And the prime example they debate is Starlink in Ukraine.
This is where corporate control intersects with global warfare. Starlink provided the critical communications infrastructure for the Ukrainian military.
Yeah, the mechanics of satellite internet allowed Ukrainian forces to coordinate drone strikes and maintain command and control even after Russian forces destroyed the terrestrial cell towers.
And the interviewer praises Musk for initially providing that lifeline, acknowledging that Ukraine would have been in serious trouble without it.
But the ethical dilemma arises from the mechanics of geofencing. SpaceX has the ability to draw digital borders using GPS and terminal IDs. They can turn the internet on or off in specific geographic regions.
Right.
The interviewer brings up the fact that Musk restricted Starlink access for Russian forces in occupied territories, and they worked with the Ukrainian government to whitelist specific terminals.
The broader question the interviewer is asking is, should an unelected CEO sitting in an office in Texas have the power to shape the outcome of a sovereign conflict? It is the ultimate trolley problem of geopolitics.
And Musk counters with a deep diplomatic, almost mathematical view of the war. He argues that the front lines have barely moved in years.
Yeah.
The result is daily, senseless deaths of young men on both sides in a static war of attrition. He is highly critical of what he calls fancy diplomats, who pontificate about the necessity of total victory from luxurious dinners in Western capitals while people die in muddy trenches.
He argues that refusing to make territorial concessions to Russia is an unrealistic ideological fantasy that just prolongs the bloodshed.
Now, remembering our neutrality disclaimer, our goal here is not to validate the morality or the military strategy of either side. But you have to look at the contrast in their frameworks here.
Absolutely.
The interviewer views the war through an ideological lens. It is a principled defense against unprovoked authoritarian aggression that must be supported at all costs to maintain the international rules-based order.
And Musk views it through a lens of ruthless utilitarianism. He sees a static equation of human suffering that needs to be settled pragmatically, even if it means deeply painful concessions, just to stop the immediate loss of life.
This tension over what is best for the world, ideological principles versus pragmatic utilitarianism, it leads to the most fiery, unyielding clash of the entire interview.
Oh, without a doubt.
We are talking about the future of Europe, the culture wars, and Musk's deeply controversial predictions for the United Kingdom.
This part of the conversation was genuinely explosive. The interviewer confronts Musk about his relentless posting on X regarding Europe and the UK.
Right.
Specifically, Musk has repeatedly predicted that civil war in Britain is inevitable within the next 20 years if current demographic and political trends continue.
And the interviewer pushes back incredibly hard on this. They accuse Musk of suffering from cloistered ignorance, sitting in America, and misunderstanding European reality.
Yeah.
The interviewer points out statistical data, noting that violent crime in London is actually lower than in major U.S. cities, and accuses Musk of painting an entirely inaccurate dystopian picture of Europe to his 250 million followers.
The interviewer even brings up Musk promoting a film called Citizen Vigilante, arguing that it glorifies vigilante violence against immigrants and empowers proto-authoritarian political movements in Europe.
Right.
He basically challenges Musk, asking, why are you using your massive algorithmic platform to foment tribalism and fear?
This raises an important question, and we need to look at how Musk defends himself here. Musk completely rejects the premise that he is promoting far-right extremism.
He does.
He claims that his core principles, safe cities, secure borders, and sensible government spending are traditional, common-sense centrist values. He argues that the political spectrum has artificially shifted so far to the left that standard centrist views are now unfairly framed as extreme.
But the core of his prediction about a civil war comes down to an economic theory. He calls it an economic forcing function.
Okay, what is that?
If we look at the mechanics of the European welfare state versus traditional immigration, there's a fundamental friction. The United States traditionally attracted immigrants based on geographic expansion and labor demand. But Musk argues that if a modern Western welfare state provides a higher standard of living through free housing, healthcare, and monthly stipends than an immigrant could achieve by working full-time in their home country, you create an irresistible economic magnet for massive, uncontrolled migration.
It's the Milton Friedman paradox.
Yeah.
You cannot have open borders and a robust welfare state simultaneously, because the incentives will bankrupt the system.
Exactly.
Musk argues that this purely economic incentive draws in populations who may not share the host nation's foundational cultural values, like freedom of speech, secular law, or women's rights.
Right.
He predicts that if this influx continues without enforced cultural integration, the friction between these deeply opposing belief systems will eventually reach a breaking point, leading to open conflict in the streets.
The interviewer strongly disagrees, of course, arguing that controlled immigration is vital for an aging European continent that faces a demographic collapse, and that cultural integration is largely successful over generational timelines.
But Musk is absolutely unshakable in his conviction. He claims to suffer from a Cassandra effect.
It's a really poignant reference. Cassandra, from Greek mythology, was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo, but cursed to never be believed.
Right.
She could see the fall of Troy with perfect clarity, but her warnings were ignored by everyone around her. Musk claims his batting average for predicting the future is exceptionally high, pointing to the success of Tesla and SpaceX against massive odds.
Yeah.
He sees this cultural collision in Europe as a mathematical certainty based on current trend lines, but feels he's being ignored by a legacy media apparatus that refuses to acknowledge the reality on the ground.
And he doesn't hold back on his view of the media either. He points out that public trust in traditional journalism is at historic lows.
He was pretty blunt about it.
He basically looks the Economist interviewer in the eye and tells them, you think public hates me, they hate you and the legacy media far more. It is a brutal standoff between a traditional institutionalist who trusts the system and a tech monarch who believes the system is rotting and that he can literally see the future.
Which leaves us with a profound juxtaposition. By the end of this sweeping interview, Musk has laid out two massive, civilization-altering predictions that are on a direct collision course.
Let's synthesize this. On one hand, we have the 10-year countdown. A decade until an artificial superintelligence achieves stockfish-level dominance over every human endeavor.
Right.
We are hurtling toward a world of quasi-infinite economic production, powered by orbital data centers and hundreds of millions of humanoid robots. A world where deflation makes money irrelevant, human labor is reduced to an optional hobby like artisanal gardening, and absolute material abundance is the norm.
And on the other hand, we have the 20-year timeline, a prediction that within 2 decades, the geopolitical and cultural fractures in the West, driven by migration, welfare economics, and ideological tribalism, will erupt into violent civil war.
If you are listening to this, you are living right in the middle of the friction between these two timelines right now. Think about it.
Yeah.
Every news story you read today about ASML chip bans, the strain on the power grid, border security debates, inflation reports, and the newest AI model release is all a real-time stress test of these two divergent futures.
It is.
Will technology save us through unimaginable abundance, or will our ancient tribal fractures tear our societies apart first?
It leaves us with a final, unmentioned paradox to ponder. If AI truly achieves that godlike stockfish dominance in just 10 years, creating a post-scarcity world where money doesn't matter, labor is obsolete, and borders are rendered meaningless by infinite digital and physical resources, will the welfare states and cultural wars we are fighting over today even exist to trigger a civil war in 20 years?
That is the ultimate question. Does the arrival of the Singularity make our current geopolitical fears totally obsolete before they even have time to happen? If you are no longer fighting over scarce resources, what is left to go to war over?
It's something to think about.
So the next time you look at that calendar on your wall, don't just ask what you'll be doing in 10 years. Ask yourself if the world you're preparing for will even exist. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the future.